Good observation.
Are we on? Are we?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll call this meeting to order. Thank you for everyone attending. This is the January 27th Pullman School Board meeting. It's a regular board meeting, and the first item on our agenda is the flag salute. So if everyone please join us. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The next item on our agenda is approval of the agenda. Are there any additions or changes or corrections to the agenda?
Did we get this? Title and audio is off, so we're okay with that. Yep, we're good.
We're good.
I'll move that we approve the agenda as presented this evening.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the agenda as presented. Any further comments, questions, or discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor of approving the agenda as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion carried. The next portion of the agenda is for our visitors. This part of the agenda is for anyone wishing to speak before the board, either as an individual or a group. Visitors addressing the board will go to the microphone, state their names and addresses prior to presenting their information. And visitors are asked to limit their remarks to 3 minutes, and the board will listen but probably not discuss the topic at this time. The board may consider moving the topic to a future meeting date as a discussion item. So are there any visitors who'd like to speak before the board this evening? If so, we'd appreciate it if you'd approach the microphone. And seeing nobody move, we'll move on. That brings us to reports, correspondence, and programs. Do we have a PHS ASB report this evening?
It appears not.
Okay. Then we'll go on to board reports, and we'll start down here on my left. Susan Weed, do you have a report for us this evening?
One, congratulations to the LMS Jazz Choir. I saw the email from Tricia James. They did a great job at the Southeastern Washington Music Educators Association Bill Bullock Jazz Night at WSU Kimber Concert Hall on Monday, and so congratulations. Everybody did a great job, and there was lots and lots of kudos to that group, so that's awesome. The second thing I wanted to point out is on the Pullman School District website, if you can find it, that's psd267.org. There is a form that you can download or have a friend download for senior citizens and disabled persons to be exempt from real property taxes. Since we have the levy coming up, and I guess your ballots need to be in by February 9th, just some people are concerned on those with fixed income if there's going to be a problem, and there is at least some help for you all. So I just would want to make sure people know about it and can look into it and download the form or have someone do it for them. And I think that's it.
Okay, thank you, Susan. Much appreciated. Dr. Johansson, do you have a report?
Well, just wrestling after our last meeting was really fun to go down there and watch the wrestlers. And if you haven't had a chance to see a home mat, there's a home match. There's about a 30 LED spotlight in the middle. Everything else is darkened while they're wrestling, and the LED is round and it covers the ring out to the out of bounds, and it's very impressive. Nice crowd, and I think we were wrestling, I'll get corrected, but I think it was East Valley, and they've been a power, and last year up there they shut us out, and this time, this was 2 weeks ago, we actually won the match. If it wasn't that we forfeited 4 weights at 6 points thing, and the final score was 48 to 24 or something like that. So in the end, a 28 to, and that's really impressive. And girls basketball's been doing very well. Boys are solidly in second place, and their only nemesis all season really is Clarkston, which is the #1 team in the state. I think we're going to have one more match against them. At least we'll match up in districts. And then the girls are improved and improving. The coach doing a wonderful job with them, in my estimation, from having sat and watched numerous Pullman games this year while watching the officials and giving them their pointers and corrections and so on. And the fourth thing is that it's exciting to sit over on the hill to listen to the munching machine and watch as part of a goodly part this time of the old school disappears, and soon to be within a year, a brand new section, including the library and so on, will be really exciting. They're getting out after it now that they've managed to get the asbestos off the roof, which was the first step. Nobody could do anything until that was completed. But it's exciting to come over and watch, and somebody'd like to, even in bad weather, come watch with me. We can get out the binoculars and I'll brew you a cup of coffee.
Okay, thank you for the report, Carl. Dr. Everman, do you have a report for us?
Just to say that encourage everyone to vote, of course, but I've noticed that there's more signs in the yards. There's a lot of letters to the editor in support of the bond and the levy, and constituent concerns, not so much concerns, but questions. So I think this particular levy and bond is raising a lot of questions, a lot of interest, and we're getting a lot of publicity. So I just recognize that as being very favorable.
Okay, thanks for that report, Jim. Dr. Montrotolo.
No report.
Okay, I don't have one this evening either. So we'll move on to the superintendent's report. Dr. Stern?
Thank you. To begin with, I'd like to pass down a card that we received a few days ago from Jamie Welch and the Garco team. They're the contractors building the high school. And so they sent us that nice card, and along with that, they sent us a photograph, an aerial photograph of just past 50% completion. So I will pass that around so you can see it.
Did that include a waiver on all change orders for the next year? Or?
And this is the price we paid for change orders. So that was kind of a nice New Year's gift and halfway benchmark recognition. And I will say, and Joe, if you have anything to add, the project seems to be moving along on track and on time. Always issues to resolve, but that's the nature of a construction project. We had a chance just before the board meeting to take a peek at the progress on the theater. Joe took us in there for those people that were here earlier, and it's coming along. It's going to be a beautiful space, and we're looking forward to that in March, and planning to move our board meetings into that space when it's available. A little more accessible for setup. This is a classroom space, and we got to change everything, and we can leave that more set up for the board meetings. And so we'll move in there, and ultimately there will be a board room built in the middle wing of the school. So we'll be able to access that right off the commons sometime by next fall. Let's see, just to comments about levy and bond. I believe we did our last formal presentation to the Rotary Club today, and thank you, Allison, for being there. And a lot of good questions, a lot of interesting questions, a lot of support and positive interest in the bond. So that was encouraging. And, you know, we will still do presentations if we're asked to. If people have questions or want us to talk to groups, we're available, but that's the last one we have scheduled at this point. And so we're in the home stretch, heading towards that final election day on November 9th, the day that February 9th, thank you. Coming right up, February 9th, the date that the ballots need to be in the hands of the county auditor. And then Dan Hornfelt was here, and Executive Director for Support Services, and he has an emergency at home, water in his basement. So he had to run home and try to take care of that. So a couple of things we're going to do our best to cover for him in his absence tonight. And one of them is we received a letter. We had a inspection, Environmental Protection Agency inspection under the Asbestos Hazardous Emergency Response Act, and the bottom line is pleased to advise you that no AHERA violations were found at Sunnyside, Lincoln, or Pullman High School. Those were the places that they inspected, so that's good news. We have our own staff are trained asbestos identifiers and removal on small portions of asbestos. If we get beyond anything very small, they call in a trained team to do that. Of course, any asbestos that's been removed from the old building has been done by an environmental group that does that work and overseen by an environmental agency.
They're out of Palouse, right? Is it still the same one that did some of the early asbestos?
I think it's the same, yeah.
That's outstanding that they have a crew that's big and trained and so on, working out of Palouse. That's good for them.
So that's good news. Yes, question?
Does it seem odd that they're reporting to you on January 13th, 2016 of an inspection that occurred on February 10th, 2014?
Well, that's got to be a typo.
Oh, okay. You know, I guess.
Because they
It's better than the inspection that was on February 27th,
Yeah.
2016.
I can't, as you know, I can't get my dates right either, so. Yeah, it was, the inspection was done in, what was the date they said on there?
February 10th, 2014. So that would have been 2 years ago.
Yeah,
We
that's
wouldn't have
wrong,
started
because
by
it was done, it was done this fall.
Oh,
They were in and looked at, not only did they do inspections of facilities, but they did a lot of inspection of records, records that we have, so. I hadn't noticed the date. We just we go to the bottom line, good news. But we do know they were here. So we'll see if they can correct that letter so we can have it in our records correct. And, now, do you have anything else?
just a brief mention, today was Collaboration Day, and it was a district-wide collaboration, and the secondary LMS and PHS met at PHS, and all the elementaries met at Jefferson, and a lot of great conversations, data analysis going on, and group I was with stayed a lot longer and was very involved and did a nice job. So,
Thank you. So, and you see that Jefferson Elementary School is on there for an update, but we will, that's a discussion item for later, so we'll wait till later.
All right,
That's it.
very good. Appreciate that report. That brings us to item D on our agenda, which is the school improvement plan updates. And the first one on the agenda is our Lincoln Middle School, and I presume that's Cameron Grow presenting?
It is.
All right.
Pop up here real quick, and obviously just thanks always for inviting us in and being able to give an update. Normally I kind of go through our school improvement plan, kind of hit every single point. I'm not going to do that because I tend to take too long. You're welcome, Susan. But I did want to hit a few highlights, and thanks for Bob for bringing up the collaboration day. Joe and I were just discussing over there that both of the math teams from LMS and Pullman High School, they want to get together again and be able to do some more work. And I'll be touching on collaboration and that idea of a collaborative culture here shortly. Real quick, just on a structural piece. 3 lunches, that was kind of a big deal for us as we made some changes. I will let you know, I know the kids are much more comfortable in the commons as they're eating and being able to get their food in a much more timely fashion. Rather than having about 310 kids, they have quite a few less there in that commons area. So those things are going well for kids. I do want to talk to you a little bit about some data pieces that have come to light, at least as of recently. One of the things we've talked about is reducing timeouts and having kids be in the classroom much more than they had in the past. And we continue to drop timeout levels over the course of this year. We're down 11% from this time last year, which is great, and we've dropped over the course of the last 4 years. The good thing about that, and I'll even touch on this next point, is that students need to be in class. We can't educate them unless they're in class and with an instructor. And so for us, that's a large deal. It also means that teachers are able to handle something in the classroom so students can learn in the classroom. That's one piece, so I brought that up, but the attendance piece, I don't know if I'm just being more diligent or if we're having some attendance issues. We're having more and more kids who are having more and more absences, whether it's extended sicknesses, whether it's struggles at home, unable to get to the school. On my end, I've done maybe more home visits at the beginning of this year than I have the whole time I've been at Lincoln. And for me, that's going to be a focus as we move forward, because if we need kids in the classrooms, we got to get them to school first. And so that's going to be a big push. Now, it might look different. Maybe if I lived on the west side, there might be more on the west side. This feels like a lot for us. And so I'll be getting some data to you very soon on that. It's a frustrating point for me because I want to make sure kids are excited about coming to school. And if they're not, or if something's happening at home, what have you, that's important to me to find a way to get them in. So we're working with parents, we're making phone calls. We have a new attendance secretary, Robin McDougall's doing a great job there on keeping me updated on who's not showing up, and so I can make those phone calls as well. Also, talking about the collaboration piece, interim assessments, SBAC assessments, and that's really a big part of what we want to do, especially this early part of the spring. Collaboration becomes a big point there. In our grade level meetings, we have discussed interim assessments. Those interim assessments we said we needed to have done in all ELA classes and all math classes. That will be done this spring. Actually, today I know our ELA group was working with the high school at looking at interim assessments and making sure, you know what, if we're going to do these things, let's do them together and make sure we're getting the correct data that we need to get out of that. So that's an exciting piece. Those grade level meetings have really focused us on that culture of collaboration. It's important for us to get together to talk about what kids need in the classroom. And so for us, that has become a large piece of what we do. So that's an exciting point that's happening at Lincoln this year. Of course, the STEM piece, I'll let you know because I'm going to invite you all to this. We have an engineering week, the first week of March. Okay, so we're going to invite you all to the engineering night, which will be on the Thursday of that evening. I know our science group especially is putting together a wonderful week in which all math teachers, ELA teachers, and social studies teachers will play a role within this week. So keep that in mind because, and I know Allison will get all those updates over email. It's going to be a great week, and that's one of the focuses we've done. Again, collaboration between all those levels. Having students in the class really becomes all about growth. And this time of year, we really start looking at student growth. What's happening, whether it's in reading or in math. We've just started our MAPS assessments In grade 6, 7, and 8, we're seeing monstrous growth with our Read 180 students, and that's a great sign. Especially in our 7th grade, I know in Amy Bumpus's class, out of those 10 students working on Read 180, 8 of them have already achieved their yearly growth goals in that section. And in our 8th grade class, I'll let you know, 5 of the 13 students that we had in that classroom have exited Read 180. They're ready to go into the general ed classroom because they don't need it anymore. And that's the whole goal anyway. And I know Bob Maxwell and myself have talked just a ton about that 6 through 8 piece. And as those 8th graders are exiting, that we're sending them off to the high school in Joe, and they're ready to go. And so that's an exciting point for us. So I'd let you know 8 of those 10 kids were there. I have early results from Kelly Cox. You know how amazing of a teacher she is. She has 78 out of her 92 students are already making their year's worth of growth in the area of reading. 78 out of 92. That's amazing. Just doing some great work. And again, actually out of all the Read 180 students that we've tested so far, 13 out of the 21 have hit their yearly growth in MAPS. These are students who weren't growing before and that are growing now. So those are exciting pieces, and a lot of that has to do with those Read 180 teachers, ELA teachers. And we haven't done math yet. We're in the process of starting math actually tomorrow. But that's a good sign for us. So that's all I have for you this evening. Wanted to know if you have any questions.
Well done, Cameron.
On the,
Was it under? Is that okay?
I approve.
Thanks, Susan. Go ahead.
Cameron, on the enrollment
Yeah.
issue, do we have a percentage here? Are we, what's-
I would say this, our percentage is, I'm going to say this, our percentage is about the same. We just have a higher number of students. And by higher number, we're talking 5 to 10 that seem to be chronic.
so, okay, that's
Yeah.
what I'm trying to get at.
So
these are
5 to 10
repeat-
students seem to be
repeat.
chronic. And one of the things for me is that, okay, we do attendance contracts, we do meetings with parents, we do home visits, we do all of those things. We need to see things improve. One of the arguments I always give to a parent is that, just think about it, if you've missed 25 days over the course of the year, 25 to 40 days, that's a quarter of your year. That's like having a student sitting next to you getting, essentially a quarter more of instruction. And when we send them off to the next grade level, that does their child no good. And so that's going to be a focus for us because we need kids in those classes. So
Cameron,
Yeah.
can you decode a couple of things for
yes.
us? One is interim assessments. Can you describe those?
Interim assessments are really assessments that should be a part of your general instruction, but those interim assessments are done in a style that looks like an SBAC assessment. So those teachers can actually give those assessments within those classrooms, and the kids will actually be getting a real-life model of what that test would look like and the skills that they need to do well on those tests.
So is that kind of a diagnosis of where the
Mhm,
students
absolutely.
are relative to the standard that
Absolutely.
they're targeting?
Mhm.
Okay. And then ELA, English Language
Arts.
Arts, yeah.
Started using ELA, I can't get away from
Our
it
our
now.
acronyms for people, anybody's watching.
I know. Yeah, Carl.
You say it's been going on all the way through the end of January, the end of the semester or whatever, but was any of it, naturally, given my other profession, I think about getting them to school and transportation, and I know at least a month in there, we had a lot of snow and
You bet.
really, really cold weather and so on, whether
bet.
that's possibly, if there was a concentration of it in that December, January period.
I would say there would be, and it's cold and flu season too. One of the things, as all of us know, when you have the sniffles, it looks different than the flu. And if we have the sniffles, we still want you there.
Yep.
because we can still educate you. But I would say you're accurate
I
there,
was
Carl.
just, I know that a lot of our kids, even though they might be bused and at Lincoln, it's on the tripper and so on,
Yeah.
but you gotta get there, and
Mhm.
if not, there's a long stream of cars that come
Right.
to both our high school and so on, delivering people, and just whether that had played a factor of people just not being able to get them there.
I would say that could be a factor with a few, and we work on those pieces individually. And the cool part about having, a school, that's okay, Carl. The cool part about having a school, we have around 620 students. We're still not that big, and we can individualize those pieces as well. If there are struggles, we can work with them individually, and those things work out really well. I will say, getting kids to school on time becomes an issue just because what used to look maybe easier to get across town in a specific time frame, it's quite difficult to get from the high school to the middle school at that time of morning. So, and there's some things that have changed, and we can adjust some time frames on when people leave home and to get to school. It looks a little different. It's busy. It's busy. Go ahead, Alice.
I don't know if I think you're aware of this, the school board has been looking at this year, kind of having long conversations about opportunity gaps in different ways that kids in our district experience opportunity
Yeah.
gaps. So this is kind of, I guess, related to
Mm-hmm.
Carl's comment and question, just as you look at these numbers and, that might be something to come back and hit us with once you understand it more, if there's some way that we can be helping to address if that's an issue.
Allison,
And
that's the reason why I bring that up.
Yeah.
I wouldn't bring up something I'm struggling with unless I want to come back, and that's the whole point is, the whole idea of a school improvement plan is to improve. And if we're seeing something that, it doesn't look right, there's something's missing there, that's what we'd like to do.
Yeah, well, I look forward
All
to
right.
more conversations.
Thanks, Allison.
Thanks.
Anything else?
Any more comments or questions? I've got to apologize to you, Cameron. I failed to introduce you as our principal at Lincoln Middle School.
That's okay. That's
We
okay.
want our viewers to know that you are the principal.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you very much. And now we have our principal from Pullman High School, Joe Thornton, to present the school improvement plan.
Well, I'm going to start by acknowledging I have lost a semester, and I don't know where it's gone, because I cannot believe we're here in January at the beginning of second semester. I don't know where it's gone. And I'm also hoping, Paul, that in fact does represent 50% of the project.
Well, it's actually more like 60.
Good, because I don't have that much hair left. So first of all, I want to start by throwing out a thank you. Paul mentioned last time the move that had to happen over Christmas break, and even though I might have been the person who lost the most sleep over that, that was truly a tremendous team effort from the support that we got from Paul and Bob and Dan, even in Bob's case up here on several days, moving boxes and moving lockers for us. But to the maintenance staff, the custodial staff, the food service staff, the tech staff, it was truly a great team effort. And I think it's an indication of the quality of our employees in the district. So that was great to see. So thank you for your support to make that happen. And I'm hoping that's the only crazy, frantic move that happens as we move into the rest of this building. I'm excited to hear Cameron's discussions about the success of Read 180, because as we all know, by the time we get a kid to the high school, if they cannot read close to grade level, everything's a problem for that kid. Math, language arts, social studies, science, everything's a problem. So I have a couple teachers up here that are excited about the prospect of maybe having Read 180 up here at the high school to deliver as an instructional model. The challenge with that, it's not free. In fact, it's far from free. So Dr. Maxwell keeps telling us, I'll think about it. But if the middle school's applying it and it's working, then we're not going to have to worry about it up here. Now, we always get kids moving into the district. So anyway, that's exciting to hear that. For our school improvement plan, an unwritten part of the school improvement plan I want to mention, but it's a key part of what we do is health and safety of students. And the one thing I've got to mention about Garco Construction, first and foremost, they are first and foremost about safety for students. They have been amazing, both the contractors themselves, their subcontractors, working with students, making sure that anything they're going to do that involves something that might be remotely dangerous, they're not going to do it till the students are gone. Sometimes they're in the gym at 5 in the morning with a lift to fix something, knowing full well that they've got an hour and a half to get out of there. So I've got to give a shout out to Garco Construction for their focus on making sure that we're operating a safe environment while this remodel is going on. As always, attendance is a huge issue, as Cameron mentioned. We continue to see that subset of students that attendance is a challenge. We probably have filed more truancy petitions this fall with Whitman County Juvenile Services. We'll have to dig into the data. I don't know if it's so much that we have more students, but we're maybe catching them a little bit earlier, and we're catching them as soon as they hit that threshold of 10 unexcused absences. I do think, and this is kind of some anecdotal data, I do think we're starting to see maybe a few more parents with the attitude of, why is it your business if I excuse my kid for anything under the sun? And my answer to them is, it's my business because it's my business. It's my business. My challenge to the freshmen every year is, put me out of a job. Because if each of you came every period, every day for 4 years, this place wouldn't need a principal. Put me out of a job. Our Cameron and my job would be easier if we had every kid every day, pure and simple. So the attendance is still a piece we continue to work on, and you can't sleep on that. Because if you sleep on that, you turn around, it's a wildfire that's blown up behind you. We're still very pleased about our results on state testing. One of the things, of course, that's very exciting to us is that we had the sophomores take the SBAC language arts test last year as 10th graders. Despite what their scores were, they were going to have to take it again as an 11th grader for a school score. And of course, we all know what's going to happen to a kid on a test if the score doesn't matter. I mean, the analogy I would give to you, if Department of Motor Vehicles came to you and said, we'd like you to come take a test about your driving skills. It's not going to result in you losing your driver's license. It's not going to result in you extending your driver's license. It's just going to give us an overall assessment of the driving knowledge of school board members in the state of Washington. What kind of effort would you guys do on that test? Carl, very being competitive, would probably want to get the best score there. But that's an analogy. So the exciting thing is, for our juniors who took this last year, if they reached a certain score, which is college and career ready, which I think is 58.42 something, or 28.42. If they reach that score last year, sophomores, they do not need to take it again this year as juniors. And that's what we saw last year with our sophomores. They really made a tremendous effort on that test, and I think it paid off for a lot of them. So we're excited with that opportunity for them. And then continuing to expand curriculum opportunities. We have, and there's been some fits and starts with this, expanding college and the high school for our students. We have an articulated program in AP US History and Civics with Spokane Falls Community College. We're seeing less students leaving Pullman High School to go up to WSU for Running Start. There are a lot of factors that work in that equation. And even though we're a bigger school now, with 800 students, we have less students going up there. That's exciting. And I think part of it anyway, not the only reason, but part of it is we continue to expand opportunities for students to gain college credit while staying here on campus. And then the new courses we have, civics, the health and fitness course for freshmen, and the career choices courses continue to be very successful. Just a quick anecdote, one of the things that they did early on with that freshman health and fitness course was they had the kids learn about value of sleep and what's important about sleep and why that's critical for your learning. And it was a real eye-opening, pardon the pun, experience for a lot of those students as freshmen. And that's one of those things, if you were to try to have that discussion with seniors who've already established their late adolescent sleep patterns, it would go one ear and out the other. But we feel like with freshmen, we have a real opportunity to impact some of their learning by getting them to make some better lifestyle choices. Quick overview of where we are currently in the halfway through 15-16. Any questions?
Comment along with more students staying in 4 credit courses here. That just really fits in with what I reported on at the last meeting about being on WIA's Healthy Culture Committee that's working around just the benefits of being in a positive school milieu show up in grades and attendance and so on. And it's really, really difficult. I know Calvin now in graduate school had friends that were in Running Start that were really good friends, but it's hard for them to maintain a relationship with the high school. Yeah, by numbers they're here and they can play sports maybe, or they can be in any of the activities or even take a course here. But the way the schedules go, it's so much more well-rounded and beneficial for those students to be in class all the time with other students that are here. It's just, that's a good statistic. I'm really excited to hear about that.
And I understand and completely respect the economics for a lot of families, which is they have an opportunity with the Running Start to access those credits. But we're starting to provide those opportunities here with little to no cost for those families. And again, you know, we see it happen time and time and time again. We'll have a kid go up to WSU for 2 years and gain all these credits on their Washington State University transcript, and then they'll go out of state. And that place out of state takes none of those credits. So what they've done is they've transferred no credits to wherever, and they've lost 2 years of being a high school student. So, anything else? Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you, Joe.
Much appreciated. All right, that brings us to item number 6 on our on our agenda, which is the consent agenda.
Easy for you to say.
It's easy for me to say, yeah. And to expedite business, we use a consent agenda for our board meetings, which includes items considered to be routine in nature. Any item which appears on the consent agenda may be removed from the consent agenda by any single member of the board and voted on separately. The remaining items will be voted on by a single motion. Tonight's consent agenda consists of the last board meeting's minutes, expense warrants, budget status report, new PHS clubs, transfer request, records destruction, personnel report, and professional and personnel service contracts. Is there anything that any one board member would like to remove from the consent agenda?
I will move that we approve the consent agenda as presented this evening.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda as it was presented. Are there any further comments, questions, or discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda as presented, please signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, nay. Motion carried unanimously. Which brings us to item number 7 on our agenda, which is action items. And the first item on that list is purchase of property. Dr. Sturm.
I'm going to go up here so I can actually see it. This is one of those items that Dan Hornfelt was prepared to talk to you about, so I'm going to do my best. I do know most of the details, but I will tell you that Dan has done most of the background work and the legwork to make sure this was ready for closing on Friday. And he's been on the phone and email a lot, especially in the last 2 weeks, because as title reports and things came in, there were some things that were questions, and we had to go after them. And just finalizing the sales agreement, as you can imagine, there are always little detailed questions that come in that have to be answered and researched. And so we had a couple of attorneys working on this. One for the seller and one for the district, and we've come to an agreement, and you have a sales agreement, and I believe that everything in the sales agreement in your packet is final. There was one thing about, oh yes, the discussion took place regarding whether the property should be taken out of open space at closing. And that decision was made that the seller would it's required that they'll take it out of open space. That requires them to go back and do some tax adjustments in the past when they pull that out of open space, because it's been farmland, and now it won't be open space anymore, and so it has some tax implications for the seller. But they agreed to that, and so we're moving forward, and that was really the last sticking point, discussion point in finalizing the sales agreement. So the conditions of the sales agreement haven't changed from what we've discussed in the past. The price is the same. The conditions are the same in terms of completing the rest of Terraview on the frontage of the property, access to the sewage pump station, and then, as you know, we've had a lot of survey and site analysis of the property to make sure that there weren't any problems with the site for construction of an elementary school or any other school. So we also came up with it might be interested in this, at the kind of the last minute, the title search discovered some easements, 3 different easements, and a couple of them were in the late 1800s with Washington Water Power. And so that was really a scramble on Dan's part to make some phone calls and find out that those easements had already been utilized, and the transmission lines and whatever those easements were for are already in place. So there was a moment of jangled nerves, let's put it that way, and then it went away. So we're all good, and it's ready for closing, and Dan is going to represent the district at closing on Friday.
It was mentioned, I think, at our last meeting, the question of whether the land will be farmed or not is to be decided with another agreement at another time and
Right.
be developed later.
Right, we're not putting that in here. Our position is that there's really nominal value either way, but there's value for us to have it farmed or have it managed, if you will, because we would have to invest money in managing it. And
noxious weed control and
yeah,
so on and so
all of
forth.
the management of
Factor I
that
was
property.
thinking about, that
Yeah,
it would behoove us, even if it was a break
Yeah.
even on lease.
yeah, and it's so nominal. But if we need to do an agreement, one of the issues that Dan and I've talked about is, that whole timing, and what do we do about timing and notification? Because if all of a sudden they've seeded it, and then all of a sudden we need the property, well, they've made an investment. What do we do about that? So those are some things I think we have to work out, but they weren't appropriate for the sales agreement. That's an after the fact arrangement that we'll make.
But I've been thinking about the maintaining it part
Yeah.
since we mentioned it at the last meeting, and I didn't have a chance before the meeting to check with farm control, Mr. Kinzer, knowing that he might not or might not, and glad to see that it may be beneficial to us to have it maintained.
Absolutely, yep.
So we would ask the board to take action on this evening. It is an action item.
If the chairman is ready,
I am.
I move the board approve the purchase of 12.5 acres property as defined by legal description Exhibit A for the amount of $430,000 to be paid in full at closing.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that the board approve the purchase of 12.05 acres of property as defined by legal description A for the amount of $430,000 to be paid in full at closing. Are there any further comments, questions, or discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor of the standing motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion carried unanimously. Thank you. That brings us to item B under section 7, policy 1111 oath of office. To present that is our Superintendent Sturm.
All right, this, we had some discussion, and thank you, Allison. I believe you made some edits to this since our last meeting.
A small
Thank you
edit,
for that.
yes.
And we'll, if I can get the right document up here. So the edit was the members of the Pullman School District instead of the Pullman School District Board. So minor edit on this one, but it reads better, and it's more consistent with our other policies. And this just clarifies the oath of office and when it occurs. It occurs after the next board meeting after certification of the election.
Okay. Are there any further comments or questions? Go ahead.
When are elections usually certified? In December?
Usually in November.
In November?
So typically this would occur in December, which is what we did this year. We have one board meeting in December, and because the election is the second Tuesday of November,
Right.
it's usually by the end of November, and so it's in time for our December board meeting.
And they're certified, if I remember right, by race. I mean, by, it's not everything. So, like we had one time a governor, I think one Gregoire, that went to 2 recounts and
Right.
took a long time, lawsuit even before it was certified. But all the other races, I think, were approved. Anything local is, it would be that one director's position. And you wouldn't want to seat them if it was, then later they were going to be sworn in, not sworn in, or whatever, so you'd have to hold off, and then hold off on your elections.
Yeah, the canvassing board at the county level, they have the say over whether something's ready to be certified or not. Within a few days after all the ballots have come in, the canvassing board then gets access to the questionable ballots, and they make determinations on those, and that happens twice, and then you certify whether.
And there's certain percentages you're not going to have a recount anyway.
Right, yeah.
So they'd be certified.
Yeah.
It's a make sense policy as far as I can see.
So what's the pleasure of the board concerning that policy?
I move approval of policy 1111, the policy for oath of office.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. The board approved the revisions to policy 1111, oath of office as presented. Are there any further comments, questions, or discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor of the standing motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion carried unanimously. Thank you. That brings us to item C under section 7 there, which is policy 1210, annual organizational meeting, election of officers. To present that as Superintendent Sturm.
And again, this one, thank you, we discussed this at the last board meeting, and it was an attempt to clarify, and I made a stab at it, and Allison re-clarified it. So I think it's better now, but it does allow for that organizational meeting to be held in December, so that when we come to our January meeting, we actually have our new officers elected and seated. We did it in January this year, worked out okay because it was the same, the board consisted of the same members, so it was not an issue. But if the board had changed in December, we would need to have those elections of new officers in December.
Okay. Any further questions or comments for Dr. Stern? What's the pleasure of the board concerning that issue?
I move approval of policy 1210, annual organizational meeting and election of officers.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that the board approve the revisions to policy 1210, annual organizational meeting, election of officers, as it was presented. Any further comments, questions, or discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor of the standing motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion carried unanimously. Thank you. That concludes our action items for this evening, so we will move on to section 8, which is discussion items. And the first item under discussion items, lettered A, is affirmative action report, which will be presented by our Assistant Superintendent, Dr. Maxwell.
Thank you. All right. Thank you very much. All right. Tonight I just want to bring to your attention of an affirmative action report. You may recall last year we completed a 5-year plan, affirmative action plan, and in that we had some goals that we had set. And just this year, WASDA came out with a new affirmative action policy and procedures, which Dagny and myself have been working on, and we'll be bringing sometime in the future our recommendations. But I thought this was a good time, since we were in the middle of the year and kind of looking at our affirmative action data analysis, that this would be a good time to give you an update on where we were with our first year of our 5-year plan. And so one of the things that we were looking at was the analysis of force by gender. And that was an area that we had identified as one of the underutilized areas. And on the back of your sheet is kind of gives you a brief breakdown of the what they call the problem area of identification, what our goal was, and kind of an update. And so one of the things that we were looking at, obviously, was in our administrator group, one of our goals was to take a look at increasing female administrators, and we have not had that opportunity yet to make growth in that particular area. The number of administrators has remained the same. But again, it gives you kind of a breakdown by gender, by job group, and then by preschool, elementary, middle, high school, itinerant. TOSA is Teachers on Special Assignment. So for those of you who may not be familiar with that acronym. The second page in your packet is analysis of district labor force by race, ethnicity. This was an area that we had identified as an area that is underutilized, and one of our goals was to increase the number of employees of different race and ethnicity other than white. And you can see there that we've made some gains in several areas, and actually have exceeded our 5-year goal in year 1. So our goal was, I'll make sure I get the number right, I think we had set, we had a net increase of 6, which exceeds our original goal of 5. So we're happy with that. So we're making some advancements in that area, and again, to help mirror what our student population makeup is as well. And again, just for your information, we break that down by job group, so it gives you a little more information regarding which specific areas. Then the third page in your packet is analysis of district labor force by age, and that's 40 years of age or older. So really, we don't consider that a problem area of identification, but it's one of the areas that we have to report on. But again, you can see that there was very little change over the past year into our 5-year plan. So 69.4% is over 40, and 30.6% is under 40 district-wide. So just kind of a quick update on our 3 goals in our affirmative action plan. which we'll be bringing back another policy and procedure set for you to take a look at in the future. But I thought this was just an opportune time to give you an update on our goals and where we were at since the year previously.
Thank you. Any comments or questions for Dr. Maxwell?
Well, the one by age thing's kind of curious in that maybe you could get into the district at 25, so that's 15-year span up to 40. And depending on when you decide to retire, and you can work in the district for twice as long, maybe 30 years. So the chances of you being in that category, or you've got a span, and so we're about right on with 60, 30, or 65, 35, or whatever, when you look at possibilities of employment. So it seems strange to look at an arbitrary age like 40 and over and under being a problem or not a problem.
Yeah. It's one of the areas we're required to report on, but, so that was an area, that's why we.
That's the designated break, is that 40?
It's at the designated break, so that's why we didn't, looking at the numbers, it's really not an area of
With
identification
60
of a problem.
40 or whatever, if I read the popular trades right, then we have about 100% of our employees are under the new 40.
The new 40, there you go.
That's how arbitrary it is. Crazy.
Any further comments or questions that you have for Dr. Maxwell?
Bob, do we have access to other school districts of comparable size and how their affirmative action reports look?
We can probably get access to that. I'm sure that because they're public documents, I'm sure we could contact other districts to see
Okay,
how they match up.
okay. I'd be interested perhaps if we maybe could do that for 2 other comparable size school districts in terms of their job group.
Sure.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Hearing none, we'll move on to the next item under Section 8, which is B 4130, Title I Parental Involvement. Dr. Maxwell's presenting that this evening.
Yes, thank you very much. Let's see, let me find it here for you. Whoops, nope. That's not it.
Needs help.
Yeah, I can't see it now. Where did it
It behaves differently than it used
go?
to.
Yeah. There we are. Well, thank you.
We've got it
Dr.
closed
Stone
out.
was helping me with this. So, again, with policies, there's been some policy updates from WASDA and Title I. Parental involvement was one of the policies. With this, a minor change in that there was some repetitive language regarding the district and parents of students participating in Title I programs shall jointly develop and agree upon written parent involvement policy. That's actually contained with our procedures, and it's kind of repetitive in 2.6, involve parents and children served in Title I in decisions about how the Title I Part A program funds reserved for parental involvement are spent. There's also some others where they're also part of the evaluation process. So a minor recommended change was just deleting some repetitive language in that policy. The procedure, which I believe is later on in the packet, there was some more substantial deletions and additions and clarifications. We had individual schools identified and some schools not even identified in the procedures. So we cleaned that up. We did a lot of language cleanup, working with Title I parent and teacher group. And as you can see, this is the policy, Title I involvement policy, and you can see where we've just deleted some of that language because points 2.1 through 6 plus our procedure address all the items in that introductory paragraph, I'll call it.
Okay, any questions or comments for Dr. Maxwell on that issue? That's policy 4130 that will come back to us next meeting. So if you have any further addendums you want to make or suggest, talk to Dr. Maxwell, and we'll move on to the next segment, which is C under Section 8, and that is Policy 2190, Highly Capable Program. To present that's Dr. Maxwell also.
Thank you. And again, kind of timely that we have this on the docket tonight. We've been working with the highly capable program and updating our policy and procedures. And today we had a 2.5-hour webinar where we found out things will be changing once again. So stay tuned. This is the never-ending policy, I think. So, but given that, with 2190, there are two minor clarifications. One is an addition and one is a change in definition, well, vocabulary word, I should say. In our policy, we're looking at adding the language, the highly capable program goals. Those were not in last year's policy revision, but they are this year because of a WAC change. So we've added that. Also, because of a WAC change, a different WAC, the word nominating has been eliminated and the word referring has been inserted. So two changes to the policy, and you can see them up on the board there now. So again, these are both straight from the new WAC changes, and so with that, we have to incorporate that into our policy, which I'm presenting here tonight.
Okay, any comments or questions?
Comply with the law.
All right. Any other comments or questions? All right, thank you. That will come back at our next meeting also. That brings us to item D under section 8, which is Jefferson Classroom Addition bids, and to present that is Superintendent Sturm.
All right, this is, there's no immediate action, but you will see a schedule in your board packet. And so this is kind of a notification that we are at the point where we have construction documents ready, nearly ready to go out to bid. We have copies of the manual, the construction manual, and some of the bid documents that are ready, and so you can see that schedule. What we wanted to do is bring that schedule to you and let you know that we're making progress on the Jefferson project, and show you that timeline. In particular, the bids will begin on February 3rd, coming right up, and that bid period will begin on February 3rd. Bid opening is on Thursday, February 25th. And board action to accept or reject a bid is scheduled for March 2nd. That's not a regularly scheduled board meeting, and so we would call a special board meeting. And one of the reasons we would do that, it buys us about 2 weeks of construction time. And so if we can do that special meeting, we did that with the high school as well. The sooner we can get that bid awarded, the sooner we can go give a notice to begin the project. And so if the board is, if there's a problem with scheduling, that was a scheduled work session anyway, so we would just have a special meeting probably prior to the work session, and then go into a work session after that. So that would be on March 2nd. And you can see we've included the schedule. And actually we met with project managers and Design West Architects yesterday and finalized this schedule. If it's large enough to see.
Have we already, we've approved going out to bid?
As a matter of fact, we had some discussion about this yesterday. You really don't have to. You have to do an approval to go out to bid when you're getting state match. So it's part of that D process. So really, you've approved the financing and the project. So we went back to all the policies and searched it out, and you could take action tonight, but you really don't need to. So we didn't
That was going to be
go.
my suggestion if we needed to move it up, because if we're going to open
Right.
bids in
Right.
February, whatever.
So when you're getting matching funds from the state, you have a whole series of requirements that you don't otherwise have. So you've really already given approval for the project in the past, so you really don't need to do it again.
So are we actually in that period now?
No, February 2nd.
Second, okay. That's when they can pick up the packet and
Right.
start.
Right. That's when it'll be advertised and opened up for requests for proposals. And
Okay. Exciting.
Any further comments or questions? If not, thank you, Dr. Stern, for that information.
I will just say one more thing, is that we had both the construction management team and the architectural team, and they did independent cost estimates, and they were within dollars. I mean, it was very, very close, their cost estimates. So their cost estimates are within our financing, so that's good news. Of course,
4 or 2?
pardon me,
For 4 classrooms?
for 4,
With
of
the
course.
2 and the 2 alternates? then?
Right. The structure, for anybody that's listening out there, the structure is 2 base bid and 2 alternate bid classrooms, so that we can at least be assured that we can build 2. The estimates are just that. They're estimates of costs, and until it's all dependent on the competitive bid climate when you go out to bid. So we think this is a reasonably good time to go out to bid. That's another reason to move it up, because the later you go, the more projects start being committed to over the summer.
I guess it's too early to know this, but I know with LMS, we had good synergy in that Lighting was already doing the hospital. And we have a firm that I understand is already working on the high school. Has there been any indication of interest?
I don't know. I would be frankly a bit surprised because of the scope of work in this project. It's so small.
Okay.
Any further comments or questions?
We would certainly welcome their attention and interest, though.
Given that we're going to be living in the building, basically, or part of
Yeah.
the time, and they're good at it. So we've commented earlier.
Okay, any other comments or questions?
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Stern. That concludes our discussion items. Those discussion items will come back to our next meeting for action. That brings us to information items, and those information items do not require action or discussion by the board. The items are included in the agenda for the board to review, and they may be moved to a discussion item section of the board agenda by any board member. So those informational items may include procedure updates that do not change the intent or practice of the procedures. So those are there for your perusal, and that brings us to the segment number 10 on our agenda, which is we are planning in a closed session this evening to discuss collective bargaining issues. I expect it will not take more than, what, a half hour? Or
I would say 20 minutes.
20 minutes, okay. And at the conclusion, there will be no decisions or vote made at all. So that will be the end of our meeting at that time. So I will declare a recess until we can clear the room and enter into a closed session. And you're welcome to come forward and ask questions, though.